for the little ding dong. Okay.
People are going to get tired of the technological
Oh, yeah.
bodily bumps.
Okay, so we'll do the, let's go ahead and chant this in Tibetan this time, the taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. We'll do it 3 times, a real simple sing-songy melody here. Sangye chodang sokye choknam la, jangchu bardu dakni kyapsu chi, dagi chinyen gipe sonam ki, drola penchir sangye druparsho. Sangye chodang sokye choknam la, jangchu bardu dagni kyapsuchi, daki chenyen gibe sonamki, drola penchir sangye druparsho. Sangye chodang sokye choknam la, jangchu bardu dakni kyapsuchi, daki chenyen gipe sonamki, rola penchir sangye druparsho. And now we move on to the 4 immeasurable thoughts. Let me just put this over. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. May we be blessed by our gurus and the Buddha so that we have the power to accomplish this. And now we'll move on to the 7 limb prayer. If there are those of you who have done the preparatory practices and where the 7 limbs occur, this is describing that whole process. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and I rejoice in the merits of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until samsara ends and turn the wheel of dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate the merit created by myself and others to the great enlightenment. And now we make the mandala offering, an offering of a universe that's purified consciousness and purified form. And we imagine that we're offering this to the Guru Buddha who is here with us. Sajipaki Jukshim Tramri Rablingji Nidegyen Padi Sangye Jingdu Bigde Ruagi Drokunam Dakshingla Chapasho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayam. Okay, I'll stop share. We're back. And I will begin. We're talking about we're continuing on this series that we're doing on the key practices of the path of the Lam Rim. And we're now on the initial scope. There are 3 scopes: initial, intermediate, and great scope. And we're now at the very first.
Can I just interject? I think we all know this, but when you're sharing this concept with others, you could use the terminology that Venerable Robina talks about. And I find it to be really very clear when you're talking to someone, instead of using the word scope, initial scope and all that, you could just say there are levels of practice, sort of like junior school, high
Oh, yeah.
school, university.
That's a great
She
analogy.
uses that, and it's a lot more clear for us because that's really what it is. And you know, you can't go to university until you have learned your ABCs. And
Yeah, yeah. And we did thoroughly cover
Anyway,
that in
I just didn't want. I just
one of
thought I
these
would
sessions.
mention that 'cause it's. I've been listening to her a lot lately while I've been doing chores and things, and I have found that to be very helpful.
So the first meditation
Look,
talk.
it's 11:11, and I've said something. We had a bet to see if I could keep my mouth shut.
No, we did not have a bet. I had nothing. I had
bet with
no
myself.
dog in this issue. She was sitting out in the living room saying, "I'm not going to turn my computer on. I'm just going to sit out here and I'm going to look at it." And I'm saying, "Why? Why don't you want to talk to people?" Anyway, so first topic of the initial scope, and this is the first meditation topic, is what makes a human life precious. And we covered the first part of that last week. And I want to open with this quote that I put in the email from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. "Every day, think as you wake up. Today, I am fortunate to have woken up. I am alive. I have a precious human life. I'm not going to waste it." So these gradual stages of the path to enlightenment that are put in the initial, the intermediate, the grade, or the grade school, junior school, university level, they were introduced to Tibet by the Indian Buddhist master Atisha, and they were further developed by the great Tibetan monk and philosopher Tsongkhapa. This particular way of studying, using these three scopes of the Lam Rim meditation practices, were not readily available to spiritual practitioners in the West until the latter part of the 20th century. So for us, this is a relatively new thing. The first meditation topic in the initial scope of the Lam Rim is what makes a human life precious. Alternatively, it's titled The Optimum Human Rebirth, or A Human Life of Leisure and Opportunity. The purpose of this meditation is to help us recognize the rare opportunity that exists for us in terms of making significant spiritual progress on the path because of the fortunate human life we have right now. The purpose is to shake us out of our complacent view that takes our human life for granted, to stop us from wasting our lives by compulsively indulging in distractions that at best can only provide us with the temporary kind of pleasures that cyclic existence has to offer. In the first part of this meditation topic, we focused on the freedoms we currently have from 8 kinds of existences that would hinder our progress on the spiritual path. 4 of these freedoms from non-human state, they're 4 freedoms that are from non-human states where there is no chance to practice the Dharma, and there are 4 freedoms from human states where there's no chance to practice the Dharma. So in the process of familiarizing ourselves with this idea, we have to make distinctions between different groups of sentient beings. We don't do this in order to make us feel proud or superior to others. We make distinctions between being born as an animal and being born as a human, being born in a place where mercilessly harsh persecution occurs based on culture, race, or religion, and being born in a place where that isn't experienced. Being born with severe mental and physical challenges, and being born without them. Being born where the Buddhist teachings are available, and being born where they're not available. Being born into a life of such status and abundant sense pleasure that we have no interest in the Dharma, and being born into a reasonably balanced life where we can appreciate the value of the Dharma. Being born into a life of incessant frustration, clinging, obsession, and insecurity, and being born into a life that has a more balanced range of experiences. Being born into a life that is a relentless living hell, and being born into a life that is a mixture of joys, sorrows, and challenges. And finally, being born with a mind that persistently thinks everything exists independently and actions don't have consequences, and being born with a mind that's capable of comprehending that everything exists interdependently and actions have consequences. Tipton Children says there's nothing wrong with making distinctions among things. The problem or the difficulty that can occur in making distinctions is that we can become biased or prejudiced or judgmental. But we're not talking about good and bad or superior and inferior here. What we're trying to do is observe our own lives and ask the question, if I was living in this kind of situation, would I be able to realize my innate Buddha potential as well as if I was living in that kind of situation? Another issue that can arise for us with this meditation is that it's based on an assumption that there are life forms other than human that our consciousness can embody and that reincarnation exists. Many of us are not sure about reincarnation and have trouble believing in it. But the Buddha never said, if you want to be a Buddhist, you must believe what I'm telling you. What the Buddha did say, and at the time of his death, is that we have to thoroughly test his teachings out for ourselves, and we definitely should not believe them with blind faith. What would be the point of that? It would be a little bit like saying, I believe in gravity, or I believe in magnetic fields. We don't have to believe in either of those. All we have to do is study and observe them in order to see if they exist or not. It's a scientific method. Venerable Rabina Corton suggests if we're uncertain about particular kinds of assumptions in Buddhism, that we take these assumptions on board tentatively, like any good scientist would, as hypotheses. This way we can investigate the Buddhist teachings without completely committing to them, so that we can test their logical or observable or empirical consequences for ourselves. Perhaps part of the reason some of us feel we're supposed to believe in the Buddha if we want to study and practice Buddhism has to do with our social, cultural, and religious conditioning. Belief in a creator God who is omniscient and omnipotent is an essential element in many of our world's religions. Some of us were brought up as adherents to one of these religions. So it's not surprising that we would project onto Buddhism some of the deeply seated religious concepts that we grew up with. The Buddha is not a creator God. He is not a substitute for one, and he doesn't even posit one. Instead, all of the Buddha's teachings come from his direct experience. It's up to us to look into the Buddha's teachings for ourselves and come to our own conclusions based on our direct experience and logical inference. The Buddha is not a punisher or rewarder because the Buddha is not a creator. According to the Buddha, we're the boss. Believing in the Buddha won't cause our enlightenment to happen or liberate us from the poisonous results of our afflictive emotions. The Buddha instructs us, guides us, helps and supports us on the spiritual path, but we're the ones who have to walk it. At the end of the day, at the time of our death, our own actions of body, speech, and mind will determine what happens to us next in accordance with the natural laws of cause and effect. The only punisher or rewarder that exists, according to Buddhism, is our own karma. And we're the only ones who can control that. So we're the boss. Now, let's move on to the second part of this first topic, which is the 10 endowments of a precious human life. We were talking about the 8 freedoms that we have, and now we're talking about the 10 endowments. Venerable Tipton Children refers to these as the 10 richnesses, and Lama Tsongkhapa calls them the 10 aspects of opportunity. They are aspects of our human life that are conducive to practicing the Dharma. They're somewhat similar to the 8 freedoms, but they're viewed from a different perspective. 5 of these endowments pertain to ourselves personally, and 5 of these endowments pertain to others. According to the text Shravaka levels, the 5 that pertain to ourselves are being human, being born in what is called a central region, which we'll explain, having complete sensory faculties, having reversible karma, meaning karma that's not perverted by what are called the heinous crimes, which we will talk about. And the 5th one is having enduring faith. These are the 5 personal endowments that we personally have. So here's the first one, being human. This is seen as an endowment or an opportunity because as human beings, we have a balance of happiness and suffering, like we were saying before. Our lives aren't completely miserable, but they're not completely great either. In terms of Dharma practice, this is very good because it affords us the space in our psyche to observe our mind. If we're mainly experiencing nothing but suffering, sorrow, and anxiety in our life, we'll completely forget about the Dharma and be overwhelmed by our problems. On the other hand, if we have an overabundance of sense pleasures and everything is going just great and we're happy, happy, happy all the time, like we're in a God realm, we're not going to pay much attention to the Dharma. We'll be blinded by our own happiness and we'll forget about death, we'll forget about all the suffering in the world. But because we're human beings with a human body, we have a balance of happiness and suffering. This is actually a good thing for Dharma practice. Enough happiness to keep our life from being too difficult and enough suffering to remind us not to become too complacent. Additionally, we have the intelligence of a human. In general, having human intelligence is a good thing. It doesn't mean that everyone uses their human intelligence in positive and constructive ways, though. Sometimes humans beings can act very, very badly, much worse than animals. Animals only kill when they're threatened or when they need food. Human beings kill for pleasure. They kill for geopolitical power. They kill in very deceptive ways to achieve their aims. And they can kill with extreme cruelty and lack of compassion. That being said, human intelligence has something special that other life forms don't have. We are able to understand concepts and discriminate between them, contemplate them, and meditate on them. Being endowed with human intelligence provides us with the opportunity to think critically and evaluate things and to set far-reaching goals for our lives. This is something that human intelligence enables us to do if we use our intelligence wisely. And this is one of the endowments that we have. The second personal endowment is being born in a central region. Now, what does that mean? This means that being born in a central place, you're born somewhere that's under the influence of the words of the Dharma, and that has at least 4 members of the Sangha. According to the sutras, a central region is one in which it is possible to take monastic vows, meaning there are enough monks and nuns so that one can take monastic vows. According to Tantra, a central region is one where the Guhya Samaja Tantra is taught. Guhya Samaja is said to be the king of Tantras. Those comprise the distinguishing factors of what a central region is. It doesn't mean that the country we live in is necessarily a Buddhist one. For instance, here in the US, we have the possibility of contacting Sangha communities of monks and nuns, of hearing teachings, and of having a supportive community around us. And it is possible to hear the Guhya Samaja teachings. The very first tantric teaching that Geshe Dratpa gave to us in San Antonio was the Guhya Samaja, thereby making San Antonio a central region at that time. So as we contemplate all of this, and all of the 10 endowments or aspects of opportunity, each of us should ask ourselves, do I have this opportunity or don't I? We may have some of them and not have others. Also, we should notice how each one provides an opportunity in our life that makes it easier for us to practice the Dharma. The third personal endowment is that we have complete sensory faculties, that we have complete and healthy sense and mental faculties. We can see, we can hear, smell, taste, and touch. We can think properly. We have intelligence. We're sane. We have all of our marbles. Most of the time, we take all of this for granted. But for those among us who don't have complete sense and mental faculties, it's a really big thing. Not everyone has this opportunity. We could easily have been born blind or deaf or severely challenged mentally. The fact that we have our sensory faculties intact is a great blessing. Especially in terms of the Dharma, it enables us to practice in a more functional way. If we didn't have all of our sense and mental faculties intact, it would be much harder for us to practice because we'd be spending a lot of our time just maintaining our life. We might not be able to read books or listen to teachings or even to think about them. We have so much going for us just because our body and sense faculties are functioning properly. If we can remember this and stop taking these things for granted, we can develop a feeling of real appreciation and enthusiasm about the opportunity this provides us for practicing the Dharma. Very often, we don't even notice the good things we have going for us. We'll focus on the one or two things that frustrate us and blow them way out of proportion, and then spend all of our time complaining about them. If we allowed ourselves to, we could waste our entire human life and all of our mental capacity complaining about things that are really the least important in terms of our lasting happiness. And on top of that, we make ourselves and everyone around us unhappy by doing that. When we engage in this meditation, if we can develop a real feeling for the opportunities we already have going for us in our life, we'll begin to feel more enthusiastic joy about the possibilities that presently exist for us on our spiritual path. Now we get to the fourth endowment, and this is the one about the heinous crimes. And Tsongkhapa says this endowment is having reversible karma, meaning that our karma hasn't been perverted by these heinous crimes. So what it means is that we haven't done or committed any of these right now, as far as I know. These 5 heinous crimes, or 5 deeds of immediate retribution, as Lama Tsongkhapa calls them, are so powerful and so negative that if one commits them and fails to purify them, then at the time of death, it's like one gets an irreversible go directly to hell card and takes a zip line to the lower realms. This is because these karmas or actions are so heavy. One will certainly not gain a direct realization of emptiness and achieve liberation from cyclic existence in this life if one has committed these deeds. So the 5 heinous crimes are: 1, killing an arhat. An arhat is somebody who has gained a direct, non-conceptual insight into emptiness, which is the true nature of existence. And they've achieved nirvana and liberation from the endless cycle of existence of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So it's a big deal if we kill somebody who's achieved that. The second heinous crime is killing your mother, killing the person who gave birth to you, enabling you to have a precious human life. That's pretty heavy karma. The third heinous crime is killing your father, killing the other person who was essential to your birth, without whom you would not have a precious human life. Again, that's pretty heavy. The fourth one is causing a schism in the Arya Sangha community. And what is the Arya Sangha community? Arya means noble. And so we're talking about a noble being, noble bodhisattvas, a community of noble bodhisattvas. And this Arya Sangha community is the Sangha that we're referring to when we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. That's the Sangha that's being talked about. It's like we're killing this isn't about killing. This is like we're causing the bodhisattvas, we're promoting discord and disharmony within this community. To a lesser degree, this can also refer to promoting discord and disharmony within any community of Buddhist followers, but that's not going to send you directly to a lower realm if you don't purify it. Then the fifth heinous crime, is drawing blood from the Buddha's body. Now, we don't have much of a problem with that because as far as I know, I don't know any Buddhas. It's possible, but I certainly haven't drawn any blood from anybody. So this last heinous crime is historically referring to the action of Shakyamuni Buddha's cousin, Devadatta. Devadatta was an extremely jealous cousin, and he was always trying to kill the Buddha to prove that he was just as powerful. He drew blood from the Buddha's body in one of his attempts to kill him. The Buddha always survived these attempts, of course, sort of like the Roadrunner in Wile E. Coyote. Beep, beep. But we can see how heavy these kinds of things are and why they have such negative karmic effects. People do these kinds of things when their minds get completely twisted and violent. If we haven't done these things, we don't have that kind of heavy karma to purify. We still have our everyday run-of-the-mill negative karma to deal with and reverse. So it's still important for us to engage in purification practices, like the confession section of the 7 limb practice that's part of the preparatory practices. These can be found in the second topic in this series of key practices of the path, that's titled Preparing the Mind for Meditation. And there are links to those in emails and on our website. Okay. Any questions about the heinous crimes? Okay. The fifth personal endowment that we have is called having enduring faith. And this is a kind of instinctive and lasting faith, enduring faith that we have in things that are worthy of respect, such as the Dharma, the value of ethics, and the path to enlightenment. We have a feeling inside us that life has a higher meaning, higher than just the mundane goings-on of this planet, that human beings have incredible potential, that the Buddha taught something truly valuable to us about how we can uncover and realize that incredible potential. So as much as we are attracted and attached to worldly pleasures, we have an enduring faith that there must be something more. We have some confidence in the spiritual path, and we have some appreciation of ethics. Many people don't have this. Many people in the world are basically concerned about being happy, living their life, having a nice family, and having enough food. They want a good job, good friends, and a good reputation. Nothing wrong with that. But most people in the world probably don't wake up and say, today I am fortunate to have woken up, I am alive, I have a precious human life. I'm not going to waste it. I have a day to practice the Dharma so I can become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. Most people probably wake up thinking about what they can do that day that will make themselves and their family happy. Maybe you get a cup of coffee and think about what they're going to have for breakfast. Many people do have ethical values, but those ethics can easily become compromised. People can very easily bend their ethical values when it suits them. So it's really not the norm in this world to have an instinctive, enduring faith in things like the Dharma, the value of ethics, and the path to develop our Buddha potential. Most people probably don't think about these things, so it's good to appreciate that we do. Buddhism would say that we have this because of a habit from previous lives, which is why it feels instinctive in us now. And it's something to really appreciate. So now we'll go to the 5 endowments that are in relation to others. Those were the 5 personal ones that we have. And there are 5 endowments that are in relation to others. They're also in relation to the societal conditions in which we live. Again, according to the text Shravaka levels, these 5 are that a Buddha has visited, that the sublime teaching is being taught, that the teaching remains, that there are those who follow it, and that there is caring for others. Other people care for others. So let's go to the first one of these, living where a Buddha has visited. That a Buddha has visited or is appearing means that a bodhisattva has accumulated the collections of merit and sublime wisdom for 3 countless eons and has reached the heart of enlightenment. That is, has become a perfect Buddha. This was the case with Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha of our historical era. If a Buddha hasn't come to a particular world, there will be no Dharma there. If a Buddha does come, but for example, dies before teaching the Dharma, that Buddha's coming will have been to no avail to others. Strictly speaking, we currently don't have a Buddha living among us on this planet, but our wonderful gurus who hold the lineage of Shakyamuni Buddha are still alive, and they are representatives of the Buddha to us. So this 6th endowment of living where a Buddha has visited is virtually fulfilled. The 7th, and that's according to Pabanka Rinpoche, the 7th is living where the sublime teaching is being taught. This means that a Buddha or the disciples of that Buddha are imparting the teachings now. Over 2,500 years ago in India, the disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha memorized his teachings and kept them alive orally after his passing into nirvana upon his death. Eventually, around the 1st century BCE, the memorized oral teachings began to be put into written form so they wouldn't be lost. These teachings were meticulously preserved. As Buddhism spread through India and then into Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, there were very learned practitioners, which led to the development of commentaries on the Buddhist texts and different ways of systematizing the Buddhist teachings. There were great Indian scholars and practitioners called pundits, such as Asanga, Vasubandhu, Nagarjuna, and Chandrakirti. There were also different philosophical schools of tenets. People extracted particular points in the Buddhist teaching and emphasized those and interpreted them in a certain way. There was a system of debate that arose throughout ancient India, and Buddhists were always debating each other, which made their minds very, very sharp. The teachings then spread south into Thailand, Southeast Asia, and China. From China, they spread into Korea, Japan, and into Tibet in the 7th century. The Tibetans have the most extensive collection of Buddhist teachings, including not only the text on discipline, which is called the Vinaya, and the Mahayana texts, which describe the Bodhisattva path of love and compassion, but also the Tantric or Vajrayana texts, which are a special method with which we can progress along the path very quickly if we are properly prepared. In Tibet, these were carefully translated from the Indian texts. They were written down and commented on, and they were preserved for centuries. Then, due to the invasion of Tibet by China, the Tibetans left Tibet, and the world was able to learn the Tibetan teachings. It's pretty amazing, actually. Anyway, Tibet had been isolated for centuries because it was difficult to get in and difficult to get out. But since 1959, when thousands of people fled to India, the Tibetan teachings became more widespread in Western countries. I can't even express how incredibly fortunate we are to have highly qualified Tibetan teachers who are direct links in this unbroken lineage, who are currently teaching us. So this seventh endowment in relation to others of living where the sublime teaching is being taught by the Buddha's disciples has also been virtually fulfilled because of our wonderful gurus. The eighth endowment in relation to others is living where the teaching remains. The teachings are supposed to remain in an undegenerative state and be put into practice so that through them, we can actually achieve the path of the noble bodhisattvas and become a Buddha. At present, the predicted 5,000 years of transmission of the Buddha's teachings are still happening. They have not run their course. Although the teachings are still being transmitted externally, the fruit of the teachings will only flourish internally in our mind streams if we develop realizations into the teachings. This hasn't happened. We don't have all the external teachings in our mind streams. So we mustn't let the teachings that we do have in our mind streams die out. Even if the Buddhist teachings are flourishing externally, if we personally let the teachings die out in our own mind streams, then our share of the teachings will have died out for us. Not only have the Buddha's teachings remained, but they've survived intact. The most precious and stainless tenets of the Indian and later Tibetan sects that combine the purest view of emptiness and the practices of both Sutra and Tantra are still available to us here and now. Pabanka Rinpoche says, for such a thing to have happened is rarer than rare. And I agree with him. The ninth endowment in relation to others means that we're living where there are those who follow the teachings. That's referring to, we live where there is a Sangha community that follows the Buddha's teachings. When most people in the West say Sangha, they mean anybody who comes to a Dharma center. In the West, the word broadly refers to anyone who is a Buddhist or thinking about being a Buddhist. And we are very lucky to have a community such as the one we have, of lay people around us, our supportive friends who help us and inspire us in our practice. In the strictest sense of the word, Sangha refers to those individuals, ordained or lay, who have a direct, non-conceptual realization of emptiness. They are called the Arya Sangha or the Noble Sangha of Bodhisattvas. They're awakened beings. Like I said before, this is the Sangha we are referring to when we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The other meaning of Sangha is a community of 4 or more monks or nuns. In the East, when they talk about the Sangha, they're referring to ordained monks and nuns. This ninth endowment, which is living where there is a Sangha community following the Buddha's teachings, is referring specifically to a Sangha community of monks and nuns. Are there any questions about that, the different meanings of Sangha and what this endowment is about? Okay. So the 10th one is living where there is caring for others. This last endowment in relation to others is that we live where there are others who have loving concern. In other words, there are patrons, benefactors, or sponsors of our practice. There are teachers. All these people give us the conditions in which we can practice. We should also be grateful to our employers and our business customers, because without them, we wouldn't have the material sustenance to practice. We live in a time and a place where we aren't starving, we aren't homeless, and we have the material conditions to practice. This is a great blessing. If we didn't have the basic necessities of life, we would have to spend so much time getting them, we wouldn't have any time for Dharma practice. The fact that we have those things is a great fortune because it frees us up to use some of our time for practice. We have access to teachers. This is very important. We need people to learn from. We can get a lot out of books, but we can't ask about questions, and a book can't set an example for us to follow. Having access to living teachers is very important. When Buddhism first came to the West, it was difficult to get teachings here. I think this was like in the 60s, and many people had to travel to India to find teachers. Now teachers come here. So this endowment has also been fulfilled for us. We've been very fortunate. It's important.
I am gonna jump in.
Okay.
There, you can see some trend of degeneration regarding that. It's not as easy for teachers to get here now.
That's true. Since COVID happened, and
there's lots of things happening with getting visas and travel restrictions, and just the financial upheaval that was triggered by COVID.
Yeah.
You don't see. Used to be His Holiness the Dalai Lama would come every year or so.
Well, he's aging. He's 86, I think.
Lots. You see Geshe Nima struggling with his visa issues. And it's just you hear about it with it's happening.
Yeah, but we have had
and we
the
will
experience
continue to, but
of them coming.
It's interesting. I think one thing I was gonna mention is I think through the sincerity of our practice and our inner commitment to live in accordance with the teachings is the main direct cause for the teachers to be able to get here. And so the more purely we practice and more purely our intent is to, it somehow has a reciprocal cosmic effect on their ability to get here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's sort of like if you think of a gardening metaphor, it's like we are preparing, it's up to us to prepare the ground properly for the teachings to grow and flourish here, for teachers to be able to come here and teach us. And in the way that we can prepare that ground is through our own study, our own practice, our own personal development along the path. We have been taught enough that we can begin to do this. And I agree, it is appearing now that it is more difficult than it used to be to travel, to get visas, to arrange for these teachers to come. But we shouldn't let that stop us from trying
No, actually,
to make that
make
occur.
us redouble our efforts, and just.
So we should lay the ground. We should lay the ground personally and collectively for that to flourish.
By redoubling our efforts, I mean in our practice and our commitment to practice.
That's it. That's how we lay the ground. That's what makes the difference. Yeah. If we're just going around, not practicing, being drawn to all kinds of attachments and attractions and the mundane world, and then we think, oh yeah, well, come November, Geshe Nima is going to be here. I think that would be something good for me to do. Well, that's not laying the groundwork for Buddhism to flourish here. We have to be on a daily basis, bringing the Dharma into every aspect of our life. In that regard, it's really important to think about these 8 freedoms and these 10 endowments so that we can get a sense of optimism and a sense that we can do the practice. We'll want to practice because we'll realize what a special and rare opportunity we have right now. Not all people have precious human lives. Human beings all have human lives, but a precious human life is quite different. Not everyone has access to teachings and teachers. Not everyone has the material resources. Not everyone has their senses intact. Not everyone has even the inspiration to follow the path. Just the fact that we have an interest in developing our spiritual qualities is a very special trait we have. And it's something to feel happy about and to treasure in ourselves. It's not a reason to feel that we're better than other people or to look down on them, but it is a reason to really recognize what we have going for us. According to all of the teachers, one of the most important things for us to practice, and this is what we can do now, we can do this on a daily basis, to practice loving kindness. We may have different goals in our life than others do, but we are still very connected to them. They benefit us in so many ways. We all live in this world together. We depend on them and they depend on us. We are very related. And as we cultivate a feeling of loving kindness more and more, we recognize that even though we all think differently and may have different beliefs and different goals in our lives, what we're all looking for is happiness. We may have different ideas of what happiness is and different methods to attain our own vision of happiness, but that's not a reason to feel alienated from others. We all want happiness. We can't live on our own. It's impossible. We're intimately related with all the beings who share this planet. As we get into the practice of Dharma and start to understand how our own mind and our own feelings work, we begin to better understand others' minds and their feelings. Because we've taken the time to start looking at ourselves, we understand better what others are going through. That breaks down our sense of isolation and separateness and gives us a feeling that we have something to offer others because we have a connection with them. We can see that through cultivating our own inner development, there's a lot we can do for others, and it can come out in very small but very significant ways. All we have to do is simply engage with others. And if we're friendly and pleasant and understanding, we convey that to them. It doesn't matter whether they know we're a Buddhist or not. We really communicate them in a way that lets them know we want them to be happy, because that's what we all want. We can do this anywhere, with people at work or at the store or at the bank, with tradesmen and cashiers, with the neighbor's cat, or the insects in our yard. We just have to practice basic human kindness and communicate it. When we make our life meaningful through the Dharma, we actually feel more in tune with others and more in tune with life itself. It's really important to remember that all the great spiritual masters and gurus and meditators and the Buddha himself had the same kind of life that we have, the same precious human life, the same qualities, the same opportunities, and they made use of their precious life. If we put in some effort, we can also make use of our life. We have the same qualities and opportunities, the same freedoms and endowments. Look at His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and all of the wonderful qualities he has. He's a human being just like us. If he can be like that, we can also. It's important to remember that. It's important to remember the preciousness and purpose of our life and to not waste it, to not waste a moment. There's an analogy that they give in Buddhism. It says we're like a beggar who has found a precious diamond hidden in our pocket. The beggar isn't going to waste any time in using that diamond to completely transform their life. Hidden within this human life of ours, we have a mind that is capable of awakening from the deep sleep of ignorance and blossoming like a lotus flower to the knowledge of all things, and we can become a Buddha. We have a mind that is capable of developing loving kindness, joy, compassion, patience, wisdom, generosity, and developing these to perfection. We have the kind of life right now that provides us with the freedom and the opportunity to accomplish this. So the purpose of this meditation is, let's make use of it. Let's do it now. especially in what Kavita was talking about, the situation that's coming up where it looks like it's going to be difficult for Geshe Nima to get here. It doesn't mean that he's not coming, but it means that it's difficult. The thing that we can really do, like we said before, is start to practice this. And even if it's a simple way, what I was just talking about, a simple way of realizing the opportunities and the freedoms that we have and communicating with others in a way that expresses our understanding that they want to be happy, just like we do. And if we do that, if we think, Venerable Rabina says this thing, which is just really great and sticks in my mind. It's like every day, think how, whatever I do, whatever I say with my body, speech, with my speech, what I do with my body, and what I think with my mind, may all of that be of benefit. May it all be of benefit to others. It's sort of like we begin to program our mind. We begin to program that we're going to say things that are beneficial. We're going to think things that are beneficial. We're going to do things that are beneficial. And the logical reason for this, and there's great logic in it, is that we do not live isolated and separately. Everything is interconnected and interdependent. So obviously, it makes complete sense from a scientific point of view to be of benefit, to try to be making everything work smoothly. And when you bring this into Dharma practice, it's, express loving kindness, study the Dharma, practice the Dharma, improve our mind. But while we're doing that on a daily basis with all the beings we come in contact with, it's not just humans, try to express loving kindness. If we do it, it won't happen all the time, I assure you. But if we begin to practice it, if we begin to habituate ourselves to it, it will happen more and more. It will occur more and more. And at some point, it will almost be like second nature, to be this way with others. And that's sort of, how I would like to leave that here. We take advantage of this human life we have so that we can practice the Dharma and we can be of benefit to others and ourselves.
I'm gonna just share something because I suspect, I'm pretty much typical of how people think of things, especially because we're all, in effect, converts to Buddhism, and the terminology and all that, and the way we think of things, we're coming from our USA citizen rep, sort of. But this has to do with the word practice and what is it that's going to transform me? And on the basis of appreciating the philosophy and the recommended approach to living, I'm talking about the things we read about and hear about in class from Christopher and the monks and so forth. That is all information that's going into our heads. And the prayers we do and all that is all supporting. And what I notice is that only by living it am I actually, I feel like I'm just at the point where I'm starting to shift from entertaining the romantic notion of being a Buddhist and having Buddhist monks to, oh, I actually have to change my attitude about this. I'll give you a specific example. Some days I go from task to task to task to task. And there's this in the back of my mind, I'm going, oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I wish I didn't have so much to do. There's this storyline. So I'm doing that, I'm, for example, taking care of the chickens, feeding the cats, washing dishes, cooking dinner,
Laundry.
There is sort of a theme that I'm basically doing things for others, but I'm doing it with this And if I don't change that, I'll die and I won't really have transformed myself. It's only if I can force myself to find a way to have a happy mind and be glad and rejoicing that I have these things, that I have so much to do, quote unquote. That, when am I going to have time to sit and read a book? Read my Dharma book that I'm reading. Okay, so the thing that I've begun doing that is helpful to me, and so this is why I wanted to share it, is I have, when I do my thought about refuge is, basically, I am on this path because I am going to be a Buddha. Eventually, I am going to be a Buddha. I would guess. I'm going to use medical doctor again as an example because it's a big task. But when you start, you will be a doctor. You will treat patients. You will be involved in their health, life, and death. And so I think, okay, I, in that spirit, am going to be a Buddha. I am going to stop being part of the sea of samsara, but I am going to do these practices, and I am lifting myself out of this sea of samsara. I find that metaphor helpful because it's sort of like dragging yourself out of the mud so that you can help others drag themselves out. It's a little, and therefore, when I'm changing the chickens' water every other day, or I'm feeding the chickens, or I'm feeding Christopher and myself, or I'm going grocery shopping, or I am doing this as a future Buddha. And how would what would the Buddha attitude be? A Buddha, if I was really serious, again, okay, if I am really serious about this, then why not just be happy now? These are things I can achieve if anyway, I'd leave it there. It's very up for me right now because I can see these things aren't going to go away. So I can either reframe it in a very deep, profound way. This is part of this movement of being other-centered.
Well, I agree with you. I know that
There's nothing to agree with.
I agree with you in that I have the same kinds of feelings. That's all I'm saying. They're not your feelings, but I have the same kinds of feelings. What I would say about that is what we have, the way we react to things and respond to things is because of habitual tendencies that we have to react that way and respond that way. And those habitual tendencies may be way ingrained in a previous lifetime. So I don't think we should be hard on ourselves because we have those tendencies, but we should also realize that new habits can be formed and old habits can be broken. And that's one way that I look at it. I look at it that I am forging new habits. I'm making a new groove in my mind that's going to eventually naturally just seem like it's natural or instinctive to just do this particular positive way of reacting and responding rather than the self-grasping one.
So that little mental game that I'm sort of like, oh gosh, I have to take the cat back to the vet again, and then when I get home, I have to do this and that. And my thought was, if I can't be happy about this now, what do I, as an aspiring bodhisattva, say? What needs to happen before I am happy about doing this? What am I waiting for?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, it's really, it's good to be honest. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to really sort of critically analyze what we are doing with our
like
mind.
I said, there's sort of the romance. Like I never doubted that I was, destined to have these teachers, and everything has been completely comfortable and automatic and full force and wholehearted, and I'm blown away. The other day I was just looking at our website and looking through some photos, and it's like the list of teachers we enjoyed. And here I am going, okay, I have to get it past like enjoying all the tangas and the books and the study, and like, like Geshe Nima has said, so you gotta learn to be other fish.
Rather than selfish, other fish. I love
Be
that.
selfish, be other fish.
I guess I have a question. So, in many things in life, you can set a goal and you can try to work towards that goal. Same in Buddhism. You can say, I'm interested in becoming a Buddhist, or I'm interested in becoming Buddha, or what have you. And so you have a goal, or an end to the means of what you're doing. On the other hand, there are certain other thought processes or philosophies where having the goal is not as helpful as just focusing on the process itself. And if you focus on the process, the actual goal will come, or the end result that you are interested in attaining will happen without saying, I exist for that goal, versus I just focus on the process and do the process, and therefore I work the process, and that gets me to advance towards whatever this goal is. And I wonder, because I don't know, but I wonder if Buddhism or Buddhist philosophy has any thoughts on which of those two approaches is the most appropriate or reasonable in their philosophical structure of, we always can say, I'm working towards enlightenment, I'm working towards becoming a better sentient being, I'm doing this. On the other hand, if Buddhism says, or Buddha says, if you accept karma and collective karma, and you accept causes and conditions, and you accept the emptiness, and that is what it is, and you can not just believe, but you can, and maybe Kavita said this a little bit differently, but if you can engage in this as your existence, then you will eventually reach the stage, again, over many lifetimes and what have you, of being an enlightened being and of being a Buddha. So when I think about this, I think that, at least for me, the goal is to understand the philosophy of the Buddhist practice, to understand and incorporate that into my daily existence, and not worry so much about, getting to a particular place or achieving a particular goal. Or
I think, I believe it's both.
I would say that
It has to be both.
I would say, Brian, that you're pretty spot on in what you're saying. And from my experience,
I'm gonna just, because
it is both, but
let me just explain.
it's almost like the process is the whole transformational thing. That's what we have.
Imagine that what I'm expressing is reframed, is part of the process is to own what the end goal is. I mean, I know that sounds contradictory, but I'm going to guess that while you're studying to become a medical doctor, you're studying anatomy, for example, and the systems of the human body. Yet you're going to be a doctor, and you don't just go, oh, I'm gonna, you don't ever lose. I mean, you entered medical school, for pity's sake. The reason you sign up to be a Buddhist, Buddhism isn't a practice without. I mean, the very first thing you learn is, I go for refuge until I am enlightened. So the goal is embedded, and I'm just gonna interrupt. So I think it's both.
It is. I would say the process is actually the most important thing. It's the most that's actually, from my experience, it's what the teachers stress the most is the process, because that's where the transformation actually occurs in us, is through the process. And like Brian said, if we just sort of know what the goal is out there, but we're focusing on the process, we're setting that process towards that goal, then we will eventually get there. But it's like the practice is the process. Process is the practice, you know. I mean, even when we reach the goal, say, of a Buddha, there's still a process going on. There's still a process of benefiting others. The process is never going to stop. So I would say this moment by moment process that we're going through is the actual important thing, you know. We have to know what the goal is, and we have to have some kind of training. It's like if you got a new power tool, right? And you want to use that power tool, you have to read the directions. But reading the directions of how to use it and what it's supposed to be used for is not the actual transformation that occurs when you know how to use the power tool, you know what it's for, and you start to use it. That's the actual process. And through that process, you learn, you know, you learn how it works and what you need to do, and you learn the mistakes that are out there that you can make with this power tool, and you learn that it needs to be maintained. You have to fix it. You have to, you know, purify your karma. You have to go back and, you know, read the directions again and continue on with the process. But I agree with you, Brian, that the process is the actual transformative thing that's occurring, and it's where our habits will transform and change. Yeah. So yeah, Kabir, I mean,
I just think
they're
it's
both correct.
I think it's incorrect to say that holding a goal is part of the process.
Yes. Yes.
And again, you know, so I just want to make it clear that it's not incorrect to have an aspiration.
No, it's like that other analogy they have. If you know, we're traveling to Los Angeles, but we know we have to go through El Paso and stop in Phoenix on the way, we have to be focused on that whole trip.
You know, and also the other thing is you have to use this term skillful means. So at different times in one's path, quote unquote, you need to apply different kinds of mental medicine for yourself. You may need to talk to oneself differently. Sometimes it may be more effective for me to go, take the long view, just keep your nose to the grindstone, just keep going through the methods you've been taught. That may be more effective for me. There may be some times when I reach some kind of situation or clump of situations where for me, it's going to be more effective to go, hey, you signed up to be a Buddhist, so get off your ass. I mean, you know, one has to also consider where, you know, which of these ways to think of the path is going to keep you moving, you know, I guess is what I'd say.
Yeah. You know what I think what happens is as we start to go through this transformation, big roadblocks are going to come up in our own psyche, our own way of how we've been doing things, how we've been behaving, how we the beliefs we have. These big blocks are going to arise because we're actually trying to push through and create a new way of being. And so when those blocks arise, it's going to feel like, whoa, this is so hard. This is so difficult what I'm going through. I don't know how I'm going to ever be able to overcome this. But that is part of the process. To cut through a huge concrete block is going to take some work. And it's not going to be easy. And we need the right tools to do it. So, you know, that's what we're trying to do. And Venerable Rabina says what you just said. Very often she says, well, just keep on trucking, keep on doing it.
You know, and then she'll turn around. She said this directly to me. Well, Kavita, your whole point is to help others. You know,
I know. Yes, and it is. She's that, and she's also that.
I mean, I guess
And it's all
what I
great.
mean is there's a time to take the long view, and sometimes you need to light a firecracker.
Yeah. You know, I think the point of this particular meditation we were talking about is that when we're getting sort of overwhelmed and frustrated, just step back a little and notice what we actually have going for us. You know, it's like the whole issue about, you know, we focus on the things that just are really bothering us and we can't seem to move past them. And if we can just sort of, all right, put that to the side and focus on this particular meditation, what actually do I have going for me here? And how can I use it? That will help. It'll help lift us up a little bit and feel better and a little more buoyant about what we're doing. You know, what we don't want to do is just criticize ourselves over and over, or get in such a downward groove that we can't pull ourselves out of it. We have to use little techniques to try and look at it from a different perspective and feel better about ourselves and look at what we have that's going well for ourselves. You know, I think we have to do it every day.
So I guess it is interesting why people in general tend to focus on the negative and not the positive. I mean, I'm just thinking about this since you said this, but it's true that, you know, a lot of people tend to focus on the bad and not the good. And the news is all bad, but there's a lot of good that you don't hear about because somehow people don't get as excited about the good as they do about the bad. And I wonder if if this concept of, you know, that people mistakenly have about self and ego forces one, or not forces, but maybe creates a process or a scenario where people naturally focus on the negative because the negative can impact them in a negative way, which they would feel is bad, or it negatively impacts their, whether it threatens their existence in some way. So this may or may not have anything to do with Buddhism, but it just triggered a thought in my mind about, you know, why do people focus so much on the negative? We have conversations with our younger daughter every day that it's just like, I say, look at everything you're accomplished, look at everything you've got, look at where you are in your life, look at what you're doing, and you know, you have tremendous things that have happened to you. Now, yeah, you've worked hard, but boy, you are doing really well compared to most of the people. But yeah, it's like, oh, well, you know, I got this idiot to deal with and that idiot to deal with, and, you know, this, that, and the other problem. And, you know, I can't get my dog to do what I want it to do. And, you know, I said, well, you know, you need to just kind of step back and say, you know, the dog is doing what the dog is supposed to do. You know, you're not going to get the dog to do what you want it to do. It doesn't work that way. So, but it is interesting to me why people focus so much on the negative rather than all of the positive attributes. And if they would focus more on the positive attributes and have a positive attitude about things, they would probably be a lot happier.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we see that all the time. This is why the thing that I heard Rabina say just this week of, you know, may everything I think, say, or do be of benefit, is like a programming where we stop looking at what's wrong and what's bad, and, you know, and I think you're right. It has to do with our own ego, this idea that we've got an ego and this negative stuff is going to impact us badly. When, you know, when it'll say, like in a job situation, when the people around you are, it's a terrible situation and there's all kinds of hierarchy and all kinds of mind games going on, and you take it on as a personal attack, it just sort of absorbs your entire life.
Mhm.
If you were thinking instead, "Well, how can I be of benefit in this situation?" and you kept saying that, your mind would start to think of ways, your mind would start to program itself to look for the ways that it could be of benefit. And maybe being of benefit would just to be leave the job, or not have a dog, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know,
Rita, I wanted to respond to you because I get a feeling of what you're saying. And, I've started this recently and I'm quite old, and it was very helpful to me to realize I'm not going to have time to make it through many infinite lifetime progressions during this lifespan. And so just kind of set my goals, pretty low, because we're still human and we still don't like doing dishes, and you don't have to enjoy that every minute. And I think it's okay to forgive yourself for this isn't really that much fun. I'd rather be much out playing with the dog or whatever. Yet,
Mhm.
not that you don't try to be more cheerful and joyous about cleaning the dishes, but that's a stretch sometimes, especially when you're already depleted. So give yourself a break is what I have to say. You got many lifetimes to be perfect.
That's so true. That is so true, Anne, really. You know, we actually have all the time there is. And when they say take a long view, I think that's what they're talking about. For us to not be so determined that, in this lifetime or in this day or this, year, I'm going to make it all right. This is not going to happen. It's
What about,
unrealistic.
the 8 verses of mind training is one that's, may I examine my mind in all actions, and as soon as a negative state occurs, may I firmly face and avert it.
Right.
That's kind of, a junior school practice.
Mhm. But we have to have that. We have to have that. Know to say that to ourselves when that negative thing arises, which is why this idea of
Okay, I have it in
Program.
my mind. It comes to my mind.
every day.
Yes. I mean,
But-
that was the first thing I memorized. That was 8 verses
Well,
of
the
mind
trick
training.
is, how do you avert it?
Right.
What do you do to avert it?
Okay, so in my case, I go, if you're gonna be a Buddha sometime, you might as well get in a good attitude now about this. How would a Buddha feel about doing this?
And maybe that's the correct process for you.
To me, it feels like progress.
Yeah.
Like I'm not.
Well, if it
just
feels like
following
progress,
it.
then it probably is.
My point is, there skillful means.
Yeah. Everybody's different.
Is everything.
Yeah. Okay. Anything? Oh, look, a precious dog rebirth. That's true. My God. Oh God, not all animals have the life that our pets do. Wow. I think, being a pet of a human is probably an intermediate state between going from, one lifetime to then getting another human life. I think it's quite possible that some of our pets could be reborn as humans, just from hanging around us and having, actually we keep them, because we feed them food and everything. They're not doing lots of negative things like getting out there and killing, except for the cats. Okay, should we close this with some dedication prayers? Okay, let me share the screen again.
Stay maybe.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead this week and do them in the Tibetan transliteration with the little tune. Jangchup Samcho Grimpoche Ma Kye Panam Kye Gyochi Kye Panyam Pa Me Pa Ya Ne Gong Du He War Shu Tong Ye Ta Rinpoche Ma Kye Panam Kye Gyochi Kye Panyam Pa Me Pa Ya Gong Ne Gong Du Pe Wa Shu. Let's do this final dedication. And there's also, we haven't done this tune in a while, so let's do this in the Tibetan transliteration with the tune.
The tune.
Kyewa kuntu yang dag lamadam dreme cheki pala long choching sadang lan ki onten razone dorje changi gopang Okay. All right. It was a pleasure. Thank you, everybody. I'll send out an email probably tomorrow that has the PDF version of what we covered today. And that's the idea, is to sort of build up a library of these as a resource for us and anyone who sort of comes to
Real quick,
the
the
center. Or
October 8th, we're hosting a sort of celebration, I guess, of the Peace Center, which is just about finished with a big transformation. The founders have turned it over to Alamo Colleges, the community college district, and are no longer making any of the critical decisions. So after nearly 30 years, I thought, since the Peace Center helped us a lot at the beginning, we used Peace Center venues and Peace Center communications to get the word out about the monks when Lama Pasang and Geshe Drakpa. There was a lot of support from the Peace Center. So we're going to do something on October 8th in the afternoon for those of you that will be in town.
there will be food, and
Yeah, we're not, our group is going to.
Save is going to have a little comeback and perform.
But it's mainly, especially to honor the founders, Ann Helmke, Rosalind Collier, Susan Ives, and then the others who have come and gone, like ourselves, for that matter.
Yeah.
Really,
So I'll keep sending that out also in the emails.
it's been at the bottom of the emails, but
Yeah.
at some point we'll put some more.
We'll give it its
flesh
own.
on its own
Yeah.
bones,
Yeah.
little bones.
Okay. Nice seeing everybody.
Brian,
Thank you, guys.
sorts out for the cat, but we have you need to place the cat.
We have a little infirmary right here.
We're happy to accompany the cat if in its whatever, if it looks like that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. It's just, we'll just see. It's, again, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I can't control it at all. And, we hope for the best and try to help as much as we can. But even the cat's got karma. So who knows what their karma is. So,
Yeah.
all right. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.